Imagine a silent expanse of stars stretching across the limitless darkness of space, each point of light a whisper of potential and promise. For eons, countless civilizations looked upon these brilliant beacons and envisioned a future of unity, prosperity, and discovery. Among them were my own people, a culture that believed order and discipline could surmount any obstacle. We refined our warfare like master artisans, polishing our strategies to a faultless shine. For centuries, this approach served us well, and with each victory we grew more certain that our methodology was infallible. Yet, all our certainty dissolved the day we encountered humans, those surprisingly adaptable beings who fought with an artistry born of chaos. It was as if we had been preparing for the wrong opponent all along, never anticipating a species that thrived in the very disorder we spent so long trying to eliminate. I am Zorvax, a veteran of many wars. By the time I first crossed paths with humans, I had believed I'd witnessed every form of combat imaginable. Our fleets were known for their disciplined maneuvers, our ground troops for their impeccable training, and our technological arsenal for its cutting-edge precision. We had built everything, from towering fortresses to orbital weapon platforms, to enforce our doctrine that victory always belonged to the side with the most refined plan. What I did not realize was that humans could unravel such plans with a single stroke of improvisational brilliance. Where we favored orderly formations, they introduced a brand of unorthodox tactics that seemed to defy logic. One day, they would employ tungsten rods dropped from orbit, obliterating our defenses in a matter of moments. On another, they would jam our communications with signals so crude we never anticipated them. Time and again, our carefully orchestrated battles collapsed under the weight of their unpredictability. Yet this story is not just mine. It also belongs to Ryan, a human journalist whose insatiable curiosity drove him to travel the stars in search of the truth behind humanity's fearsome reputation. Ryan arrived on our homeworld after the last bombs had fallen, after our once proud cities lay in ruins. He found me amid the debris, a humbled soldier with stories to tell. Through hours of interviews, he pieced together the vivid tapestry of warfare that had ravaged galaxies. But he didn't stop at the destruction. His investigations illuminated the dual nature of the human spirit, a species capable of devastating violence, yet also possessed of remarkable compassion and mercy. My people once thought them monstrous for their capacity to adapt so quickly and to wield terror so effectively. Over time, we came to understand that their capacity for empathy was just as profound. Long before humans crossed our path, our civilization flourished under the guiding principle that meticulous planning was the key to success. We had developed combat doctrines so detailed that every step of an invasion, every response to an enemy countermeasure, was outlined with machine-like thoroughness. Our fleets moved in perfect unison, and our ground armies advanced with a clockwork precision that confounded most adversaries. And indeed, for generations, it worked. We brought many systems under our influence, often with minimal bloodshed because our calculated strategies left our enemies little room to maneuver. But these victories bred an arrogance that set us up for failure. We came to believe our approach was the peak of warfare. When rumors began circulating about a rogue species, humans, who fought with wild, reckless abandon, we dismissed those tales as myth. That was until the first tungsten rods fell from orbit onto our outer colonies. In an instant, our fortress walls and heavily armored positions crumbled. Our tacticians, so used to symmetrical showdowns, could not adapt fast enough to the humans' freeform methods. Whenever we tried to establish a secure front line, we found ourselves outflanked by an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere, using improvised vehicles or exploiting weaknesses we never considered. After each defeat, our leaders convened emergency councils, convinced that we just needed better intelligence or tighter formations. Yet every time we tried to corner the humans through our predictive models, they responded with a maneuver no algorithm could have foreseen. Our entire sense of order collapsed under the assault of their ingenuity, and what we had once viewed as a guaranteed path to victory became little more than a distant memory. As Ryan collated stories from all sides, he discovered a pattern that made human warfare truly terrifying: their ability to learn and adapt in real time. They did not simply rely on new weapons. They reinvented their tactics after every encounter. If a particular gambit failed, they discarded it without hesitation, developing a revised strategy on the fly. Perhaps one of the most dramatic examples was the electromagnetic pulse tactic they used against us. Cornered and outgunned, they sacrificed part of their own fleet in a massive EMP blast that disabled everything in the combat zone, ours and theirs. In the ensuing chaos, their ground troops boarded our largest capital ships using nothing but pressurized suits and small salvage rockets. We, who prided ourselves on advanced electronic warfare systems, suddenly found our technology scrambled. Within hours, the humans had turned a sure defeat into a striking victory. This reckless but brilliantly effective approach exemplified their uncanny resilience. The paradox, however, goes beyond their expertise in destruction. While humans are capable of overwhelming brutality on the battlefield, they also demonstrate a capacity for compassion that defies simplistic categorization. Ryan's interviews included testimonies from other species. The Lyrians, known for their philosophical approach to conflict, the Venari, revered for their ancient and stoic wisdom, and the Nebulan Collective, whose unity was tested and shaped by centuries of internal strife. Each of these civilizations recalled how, after the initial shock of human aggression, there often followed a period of negotiation, rebuilding, and sometimes even alliance. I have personally witnessed human commanders call off an attack if they believed civilian casualties would be too high. At first, we perceived such actions as tactical errors. Why spare a vulnerable enemy? Later, we recognized it as a moral principle that endeared them to populations tired of endless war. Far from being the savage marauders we initially believed them to be, humans showed us that mercy could serve as a powerful strategic asset, winning over hearts and minds more effectively than relentless subjugation. Yet for all their strengths, humans also bear deep scars of their own. Ryan once invited me to visit a memorial on a planet they called Ether. It had been the site of a cataclysmic battle that left entire regions devastated. In the city center stood a colossal monument etched with thousands of names of the fallen, human and alien alike. People from different species gathered there daily, some to mourn, others to reflect on how easily war can devastate entire worlds. As I read through the endless list of names, I felt the weight of sorrow that accompanied each etched letter. And then I saw small groups, human families, members of other civilizations, even a few of my own people, working together to rebuild. Their approach to remembrance was neither about glorifying past victories nor burying the tragedies. Instead, it served as a collective vow: never forget the costs of war and never cease striving for peace. This focus on memory and reflection is, in many ways, the cornerstone of human civilization. Their history is riddled with conflicts dating back millennia. Wars on their homeworld were once fought with primitive weapons, evolving into mechanized warfare, and then into battles spanning solar systems. Despite this perpetual cycle of conflict, they have built an equally enduring tradition of learning from each catastrophe. In museums and archives scattered across Earth and its colonies, meticulously preserved relics of past battles tell a story of relentless adaptation. Books and digital repositories detail the mistakes that led to catastrophic wars, the turning points where a single leader's decision changed the fate of millions, and the peace treaties that laid the groundwork for a new era. Ryan's own research into these archives uncovered a mosaic of lessons that transcended any single war. He spoke of an ancient conflict on Earth in which entire nations nearly annihilated one another, only to come together afterwards to form a lasting union. He found tales of scientific breakthroughs spurred by desperation, life-saving medical advancements developed in the crucible of combat, space travel accelerated by the need to protect or expand territory. For humans, the line between destruction and progress has always been fragile, and yet, they consistently managed to grow from each near-apocalyptic event. It was both humbling and unsettling to realize that the unstoppable force we faced was a product of centuries of refining not just weaponry, but the understanding of war itself. The consequences of facing humans are written plainly in the stories I've gathered from allies and former enemies. Seraphine of the Lyrians once described how their culture, which emphasizes spiritual balance, struggled to comprehend humanity's willingness to gamble their own lives for a tactical advantage. Tharn of the Venari confessed that he was unnerved by how swiftly humans could swing between destructive fury and benevolent aid. He had seen them level a fortress in 1 hour, then distribute food and medical care to civilians in the next. Nova of the Nebulan Collective recounted how the humans helped rebuild the ruined capital of her world, forging a peace that endured long after the last shot was fired. These voices from distant corners of the galaxy underscore that humanity is far more than just a merciless war machine. They are a civilization capable of learning from sorrow and responding to tragedy with solidarity. For my part, I recall standing in the ruins of our once mighty capital, overshadowed by the ragged skyline where gleaming spires once stood. In the middle of the rubble, I watched as a squad of human engineers, shoulders smeared with dust and sweat, worked beside survivors from my own species to restore water systems and power grids. As I approached, one of the humans offered me water and a place by the fire. In that shared moment of exhaustion, the notion of enemy felt strangely out of place, overshadowed by the shared goal of survival and restoration. Though they had brought our empire to its knees, they now knelt beside us, rebuilding what had been destroyed. The paradox was almost too great to comprehend. Yet there we were, two adversaries no longer so sure of their roles in the aftermath of war. Such stories illustrate what Ryan calls the contradictory heart of humanity. They can descend upon a planet like a tempest, yet once the storm has passed, they sow the seeds of regeneration. Their perspective on warfare is not one of eternal conquest, but of continuous evolution, a cycle in which each generation inherits both the scars of battle and the lessons gleaned from them. The path they walk is perilous, fraught with moral ambiguity and the constant risk of escalation, yet it is also a path that fosters growth. In the face of adversity, they develop new philosophies and technologies. Faced with monstrous challenges, they find new depths of compassion. War, in the human understanding, is as much a psychological theater as it is a physical one. Rumors of their alleged invincibility spread quickly, and morale can buckle beneath the fear of facing an enemy said to adapt to any contingency. My people believed ourselves immune to such rumors, trusting in our rational approach to data. But when we saw entire battalions vanish under sudden, unorthodox attacks, like improvised railguns hidden in civilian freighters, it was difficult not to be rattled. The stories we heard of unstoppable human special forces turned out to be embellished, but they contained just enough truth to sow panic. Even without intentionally orchestrating this psychological campaign, humans benefited from it, their fearsome reputation weakening our resolve before they ever set foot on a battlefield. And yet, there are also accounts of human restraint, of times they held back from delivering a decisive blow because the price in civilian lives would be too high. In one notable engagement, a human fleet confronted my people's evacuation ships near the planet's southern pole. Outgunned and exhausted, my compatriots braced for annihilation. To our collective astonishment, the human commander stood down rather than slaughter unarmed refugees. Although this gave some of our military forces time to regroup, it also fundamentally shifted the way we saw our enemies. Their willingness to show mercy became a hallmark of their reputation, standing alongside their formidable prowess in battle. Over time, as Ryan compiled these stories, a grand narrative emerged. Humans may be the most paradoxical warriors in the known galaxy. Some civilizations see them as heroes who deliver entire star systems from tyrants. Others view them as an unstoppable plague, leaving rubble in their wake even as they proclaim a desire for peace. The reality is more nuanced than either extreme. Humanity wields a double-edged sword of innovation. It can bring about untold destruction, but it can also heal and uplift those caught in the crossfire. Their open-ended approach to conflict defies the fixed doctrines most species rely on, making them simultaneously dangerous and compelling. In speaking with survivors from numerous worlds, one recurring theme came up: the belief that humans do not fight solely for conquest or resources, but often out of an intense drive to protect something precious, a home, a set of ideals, or simply the lives of loved ones. This personal stake in the outcome imbues each soldier with a motivation that transcends mere orders from high command. Many times, a pinned-down human squad has rallied around a simple idea: protect each other. That sense of brotherhood or sisterhood stands in contrast to more hierarchical armies, where orders flow from the top and compliance is expected without question. In human units, leadership is often dynamic. Responsibility shifts to whoever has the right idea at the critical moment. This communal approach fosters a rapid, collective adaptation that outpaces the slower responses of rigid command structures like ours. It was this flexibility that we found so difficult to counter. When a plan failed, humans did not despair. They saw it as a puzzle begging for a new solution. Over and over again, we watched in disbelief as they escaped defeats that would have spelled annihilation for less adaptable armies. In truth, it was not just their strategies that overpowered us, it was their mindset. They were able to balance cynicism with hope, calculation with gut instinct. We had never encountered such an all-encompassing approach to survival. And behind it all loomed their capacity for empathy, a trait that often seemed to blossom in the midst of chaos. One of the greatest lessons I learned came from Maya, a soldier whose unit was famous for a daring rescue operation that saved an entire alien settlement during a particularly brutal siege. The siege was the work of marauders exploiting the chaos of the larger war, and they took advantage of the confusion to prey on weaker communities. Maya's squad, though far from the settlement's location, intercepted a distress signal and chose to divert precious resources to mount a rescue. By the time they arrived, the settlement was in flames, and yet they managed to pull hundreds of civilians, children, elders, entire families, to safety. When I asked Maya why her squad would risk so much for strangers, she answered with a conviction that still echoes in my memory. Because if we don't, who will? That question embodied the spirit of human warfare, a brutal but ethical lens that sees beyond mere enemy lines to the broader moral consequences of every conflict. Tarek, an engineer from the same expeditionary force, offered another facet of human ingenuity. He specialized in converting the wreckage of battle into improvised weapons or life support systems. During one campaign, his regiment found itself stranded in hostile territory with no supply lines. Tarek led a small group that salvaged power cells from destroyed vehicles to create portable shields, which provided just enough cover for a makeshift evacuation route. He recounted how, in dire situations, humans often excel at turning scraps into salvation, bridging the gap between certain doom and a fighting chance. This creative spark is woven throughout their history. Time after time, necessity has been the mother of invention, forcing humans to innovate at breakneck speed in every field from medicine to astrophysics. As I listened to these stories, I began to understand why so many species call humans the gods of war. The title isn't simply a reflection of their destructive capabilities. It encapsulates their extraordinary range of possibility, from annihilation to redemption, from cruelty to compassion, from cunning to benevolence. It's a stark reminder that war reveals the full spectrum of who we are, or who we can become. For humans, that spectrum is wider than we ever imagined. They can be savage and yet merciful, disorganized and yet precise, self-sacrificing and yet fiercely protective of their interests. Against such flexibility, our rigid doctrines stood little chance. Yet war, as humans well know, comes with an extraordinary cost. Their worlds are scattered with memorials honoring the dead, not simply from human ranks, but from every species that has fought by their side or against them. These memorials range from towering monuments inscribed with names of the fallen to quiet gardens where families gather to remember loved ones. Ryan took me to one such site, where the recorded testimonies of survivors played softly through hidden speakers. Voices from different species recounted the final moments of epic battles, as well as acts of spontaneous kindness that transcended all the hatred and fear. I watched children, human and alien, wandering through the memorial grounds, playing tag among the statues. Their laughter was a testament to the possibility that peace can blossom where war once raged. My people, broken by our arrogance, found an unexpected second chance when the humans offered assistance in reconstructing our infrastructure. Initially, we viewed this with suspicion. Why would conquerors help rebuild the society they had just toppled? Over time, though, we understood that their endgame was never to rule us. They sought alliances, trade partnerships, and cultural exchange. We discovered that in the aftermath of many campaigns, humans often prefer forging bonds to admit humility replaced hubris, and gratitude softened our hostility. When Seraphine of the Lyrians spoke about humans, she noted how they excel at infusing chaos with creativity. In their battles, they are not simply a whirlwind of destruction, they are also an infinite source of new ideas. This creative dynamism doesn't stop when the fighting ends. They apply it just as fervently to reconstruction efforts, scientific cooperation, and diplomatic initiatives. Entire communities, once devastated by war, have witnessed the strange miracle of human-led revitalization. Green spaces growing atop old fortifications, schools built in the shells of warships, medical breakthroughs discovered in labs that once manufactured weapons. The cycle of death and rebirth is as old as the galaxy itself, but humans seem to embody it in a particularly dramatic fashion. Listening to the testimonies from Tharn of the Venari, I learned of how fearsome human soldiers could be in the midst of battle, seemingly unyielding and savage, yet how some of them, after the conflict, dedicated themselves to the emotional healing of enemy combatants, volunteering time and resources to help rebuild their communities. Tharn once witnessed a group of human veterans construct a community center in a city they had partly destroyed weeks earlier. That community center became a neutral ground for negotiation, cultural exchange, and the forging of treaties. The seeds of the next war were instead replaced by the beginnings of an enduring peace. Tharn called it the baffling genius of humanity, a testament to how they never stop evolving, even once the smoke clears. Meanwhile, Nova of the Nebulan Collective reminded us that memory is fundamental to human strategy. They keep vast records of their failures as well as their successes. Their monuments and museums do not gloss over atrocities. Instead, they present them starkly, forcing each new generation to confront the horror of which they are capable. This unblinking documentation of both triumphs and tragedies ensures that the cost of war remains an ever-present reality. Perhaps it is this collective awareness that gives humans the resolve to treat each new conflict not as an inevitability, but as a challenge to do better. And so the question remains, with all their destructive might, their cunning, their capacity for empathy and learning, what do humans ultimately seek? In my discussions with Ryan, the consistent theme that emerged was survival, a desire to protect what they cherish, to grow and explore, to safeguard the fragile societies they build. When cornered, they fight like cornered beasts, with an unmatched will to persevere. When the danger subsides, they exhibit a remarkable inclination to heal wounds, to extend a hand to those once deemed enemies. It is an ethos that confounds many, but it also captivates us. How can one species so wholeheartedly embody destruction and yet yearn for peace? Some say it is precisely because they know the horror of war so intimately that they cherish peace all the more. Having ignited countless conflicts in their own history, they have also learned countless times that violence breeds suffering. Over and over, they have walked the razor's edge between annihilation and progress. The stories they tell, whether in books, films, or now through cosmic alliances, serve as warnings of the devastation they can unleash. But these same stories also speak of redemption, second chances, and forging unity out of chaos. The gods of war indeed, but also practitioners of renewal. That renewal is what we are witnessing across the galaxy now. Where once smoke and flames choked the skies of countless worlds, we see new structures rising. Hospitals, schools, centers of art and philosophy. The very metals and resources once used to fabricate weapons are repurposed for building homes and starports. Treaties signed on battered starships lay the foundations for alliances that transcend the old boundaries of species and ideology. And, in many of these new alliances, humans play a central role. They bring the memory of conflict, reminding everyone present of the fragile line between order and chaos, and they bring the promise of possibility, proving that even the harshest enemies can become partners in rebuilding. Reflecting on these changes, I recall a conversation with a human diplomat named Cashin, who visited my world shortly after the final ceasefire was declared. She spoke of a concept called constructive vigilance, the notion that one must remain prepared to defend against threats while simultaneously striving to prevent the conditions that give rise to those threats. She admitted that, in human history, vigilance too often lapsed into paranoia, leading to more wars. Yet she believed societies across the galaxy could learn from these missteps if they treated every new partnership as an opportunity to rewrite the old script. Standing in a newly rebuilt city square, still bearing the scars of orbital bombardment, her optimism struck me as both naive and strangely reassuring. Now, with entire star systems forging new bonds and the once unthinkable idea of large-scale galactic cooperation gaining traction, we stand at a crossroads. Humanity's example offers both a caution and a beacon. Their tradition of war, honed by centuries of adaptation, demonstrates the sheer heights conflict can reach in complexity and violence. At the same time, their approach to rebuilding, memorializing, and empathizing offers a vision of how to move beyond the cycle of destruction. War will likely never be entirely eradicated. There will always be new tensions, new frontiers, new misunderstandings. But if we collectively learn from the aftermath of each conflict, if we remember the heartbreak as well as the heroism, perhaps we can steer the galaxy onto a path where the cost of war diminishes over time, replaced by a universal dedication to growth and unity. In bearing witness to all of these events, I have undergone my own transformation. I, Zorvax, once believed in the absolute supremacy of order and discipline. Through countless battles, I maintained unshakable faith in our pristine strategies. But here I stand, a veteran on a world that has known ruin at the hands of these unpredictable humans, realizing that war is not a single fixed art. It is a mirror reflecting the deepest truths about who wields it. In that mirror, we see both the capacity for unimaginable horror and the promise of creation. Humanity, in its reckless brilliance, demonstrates that any species can transcend old limits if it is willing to embrace the chaos of potential, if it is willing to learn from defeat, to show mercy in victory, and to collaborate in the healing that must follow devastation. This chronicle, then, is a cautionary tale and an invitation. It is a testament to the fact that no matter how advanced our weapons or how thorough our tactics, an adversary with the will to adapt and the heart to remember can surpass us. It is also an exhortation to see beyond battle lines, to recognize that understanding and compassion need not be weakness. And finally, it is a celebration of renewal, of the countless new alliances that have blossomed in the shadow of these great wars, alliances that would never have formed without the crucible of conflict to reveal our common humanity or sentience, to use a broader term that includes all species seeking harmony in the cosmos. As the final engines of war machines fall silent and the last plumes of smoke dissipate across distant skylines, we stand on new ground. Rebuilding efforts, collaborative research programs, and cultural exchanges have taken root, signifying a dawn that countless civilizations once thought impossible. I see it in the eyes of children who wander unafraid through what used to be no man's land, in the newly formed committees that consist of humans, Lyrians, Venari, Nebulans, and even some of my own people, all working side by side. I see it in the heartfelt rituals of remembrance that ensure the lessons of war are passed on to future generations rather than erased. None of this would have happened if not for the paradoxical power of humankind. They brought both the fearsome edge of chaos and the gentle promise of reconstruction. They reshaped how we define victory, how we regard mercy, and how we conceive of the aftermath of conflict. To some, they remain a terrifying enigma, a chaos that could be unleashed at any time. To others, they are luminous harbingers of change, spurring civilizations to look within and discover untapped wells of courage and empathy. In truth, they are simply human, guided by that contradictory blend of tenacity and compassion that has baffled and inspired me from the first day I confronted them on the battlefield. Thank you for joining me, for listening to these many voices and perspectives, for bearing witness to the sweeping tapestry of war and the flickers of hope that glimmer in its wake. In their darkest hours, humans showed us all how innovation can be a double-edged sword, carving out both destruction and redemption. In their moments of mercy, they revealed that empathy can be a powerful strategic advantage as well as a moral imperative. May these stories serve as a guiding light to anyone who stands on the brink of battle, to any leader tempted by the allure of absolute order or the thrill of unleashing chaos. And may we remember that the essence of conflict lies not simply in weaponry. Let it become a testament to resilience and unity, a reminder that even in the ashes of our most devastating battles, life and hope can flourish. Humans, whom we once feared as uncontrollable agents of ruin, have proven to be catalysts for profound change, revealing that the line between savagery and compassion is often thinner than we dare imagine. As we move forward, let each of us, no matter our species or our history, strive to understand rather than merely defeat, to rebuild rather than simply conquer, and to honor every sacrifice by forging a tomorrow kinder than yesterday. Thank you for experiencing this chronicle. If you found these stories compelling, if you yearn for more glimpses into the vast cosmos of science fiction and epic struggle, remember to like and subscribe. Let us continue to explore new horizons, not merely as spectators to the tragedies of war, but as participants in the grand mission of shaping a better future. We have witnessed the powers of ingenuity and mercy, the devastation of hatred, and the balm of reconciliation. Let all these elements guide you, so that one day the term gods of war may be repurposed to mean not destruction, but the enduring capacity of every civilization to rise above its darkest instincts and shape the stars into beacons of lasting peace.